Hey everybody, welcome to etrailer.com. I'm Bobby, and today we're taking a look at the Yakima BedRock truck bed rack system here on our 2020 Toyota Tundra. So this is going to be a pretty cool way of really starting to maximize your guys' bed space that you have on the back of your truck by allowing you to go ahead and throw some of your cargo or other kinds of accessories here on the top of your bed, gaining you access to leave that bulky cargo underneath it. And again, just giving you a little bit more of a better cargo management system. What's going to be excellent about these guys, we are going to be on a nice HD bar set, giving us very good support here, making them really solid and sturdy. I really do like these HD bars. You guys have probably seen on that end too. A nice little tie-off point to go ahead and start securing all of our cargo as well. And we can kind of just use that to hold some of our bigger, bulkier cargo, which is really nice. Now the bars themselves are going to be made of aluminum. However, it has a really good support structure throughout the entirety of it. Of course, making sure we have that nice weight capacity that we mentioned. You are going to have a nice little black powder coat finish on here as well. Now, one thing I'll say with almost any black powder coat finish, it is going to be up to us to make sure that it actually lasts us for the years to come. What do I mean by that? Well, if you're throwing on some metal objects on here, you're going to find yourself scratching and kind of denting this a little bit. Not really so much denting. The scratching is really what becomes kind of a problem. You start pitting that black powder coat, and then that actually allows you to start kind of working down that layer. And now luckily for us, we have that aluminum on the underneath, but if you guys want to keep it looking nice and pretty as you're seeing it, just be a little gentle as you are setting up any of your other gear on here. I'm really making sure we're utilizing that top rubber strap as well to go ahead and make sure we're not having any of that contact. Now what's cool about this too, we do have a T-slot attachment on here. Might be a little hard for me to show you guys. No, I can get that out of the way. Now what we have to end up doing though is actually taking off our end cap here. Now sometimes some people can slot it in here. If you guys are having trouble with that little end cap though, we're just gonna have a little bit of a bolt on the underside that can walk that off. Now a lot of times you can fit right into that channel, which is great. Of course though, you are gonna have to cut your rubber stripping here to size. Unfortunately, no good way of just depressing this and getting out of the way. So that is one other little step that we might have to do, but that's not really too bad. And we definitely wanna make sure we actually have that strip in place. Otherwise, we're definitely gonna start hearing a whistle as we reach those higher speeds. Now, one thing I really do like about the BedRock system is going to be the clamps that we have here. The big thing for me is the ability to actually lock these, which is excellent. And that way we can go ahead and make sure that nobody can actually open these up and get them when they're left unattended on our vehicle. They just stay nice and secure, which is excellent. And one thing too with these clamps, that really makes that installation really, really easy. So we're going to break that down here in just a little bit for you guys. But yeah, really like how that clamp system works. Now, if we do have that deck rail system that a lot of the Tundras are going to have, that could be excellent to actually go ahead and kind of skip this clamp-on style that we're going to show you guys here later on in the video. Really, really like how those adapters work. So if you guys do have that, never fear. It is going to come included with your purchase, which is going to be excellent to go ahead and get it installed. And speaking of installation, why don't we go ahead and see how we can get these guys clamped on. To begin our installations can be really straightforward. We just want to find ourselves a nice little bench. The tailgate works great to go ahead and lay out our rail. Then we want to flip it to the underside here. We're going to need to start by taking off our end caps. We can do that by removing this little screw here with our included tools. Now the one thing, getting this little screw out can be a little hard. I like to try to just take my pinkies, kind of pinch underneath it. Again, just give yourself a couple little tries at it. Little plier can help too, if you just want to make it a little easier. With that, our screw is removed. We can pop off our end cap and start adding on our towers. Now we may need to do a little assembling on our foot pads at home. To do that, we just have a little screw here that's actually holding in our mounting plate. With that mounting plate reinstalled though, we just need to go ahead and slot this here on our bars. To do that, I just kind of dangle that plate. Allow it to slot in our channel here. Let's make sure that our open face is towards the end of our bar, of course, as we're going to be setting this on our side rail. But now that we've slotted that in, let's just go ahead, re-add our end cap on here and tighten it up. With our other foot pad added on to the other end of our bar, we can take our bars and set it on top of our bed. I like to flip it around. Now there's a couple ways of going about it. What Yakima likes to tell you is to take the distance between your bed. What I've always found though, just setting on here is gonna be a lot easier to start doing our own adjustments. The first thing you wanna do is setting this first bar here. So what I did with that, I just gone ahead and I've taken the measurements from my bulkhead to the closest part of my tower on both ends, and I found that overhang and I've gone it aligned. But once we've gone ahead and set that first one, it's gonna be easier to set our back one, and we're gonna bring you that through the process of actually setting your bar in place. So the first first step for us is actually finding the distance from our front bar. So we're gonna go ahead and pick an arbitrary number, but a lot of us are gonna need a minimum of distance of 24 inches from that front bar, as a lot of accessories are gonna need that spacing for your cross-rail systems. But let's go ahead and see how we get this on. So actually fixing where your towers are is going to be our next step. So what we have to do is figure out our overhang on our bars. Now, I've got to give ourselves a pretty good lead here of where we want it. So if we're taking a look from the back of our vehicle, it can be nice to eyeball it at first, but then you want to grab yourself a handy dandy tape measure. And now that we've got it pretty close, nice and aligned, I'm going to take my tape measure here, and to the very top here where my tower is to the end of my crossbar, that's putting me at 6 inches on my passenger side. I can double check that with my driver's side. And it looks like that 6-inch overhang is exactly what we're wanting here. So at this point, now what we need to do is actually flip our towers over. It can be helpful to have a second pair of hands, but if you guys don't have that, that's okay. We simply want to take our towers and flip it over. Now what's going to end up happening, right, we're going to have movement here with our towers, but what we can do is take our tape measure here, kind of do that reverse of that, right? So now I kind of see I have a shift of a little bit there, right? Almost 1/4 inch. Need to shift that back just a little bit until we're nice and aligned. I'm on that front face of my tower. That's looking pretty good to me. Now I need to take my included wrench here and tighten this up into position, being careful not to move my tower. Can be helpful, of course, to take note of where your tower is on the underside here. And that way you can just tighten it up. And of course, repeat that process on the other side and set it in place. Well, now that we have our tower set, we're nice and locked in on that distance. We need to go ahead and get the distance of where we actually want to set our bar. So I've already gone ahead and set my front bars, but this is where it's going to be a little bit up to you guys at home, because we're all going to have different accessories and we're all going to need different requirements for our length. But pretty good rule of thumb is just give yourself a little bit of distance between your cab here. We don't want any of our accessories interacting with the back here of our cab, of course, something like a bike carrier or something. And I've just gone ahead and I've set it from the bulkhead here today to the very end or the beginning of my pad, about 11.5 inches for ourselves here today. Now again, this can be a little different at home, but it's going to be important just to make sure we are getting these measurements even across the sides of our rails. And then we can simply take it from the middle of our rack to the other side. That's putting me at 35.5 inches. Again, you're probably going to need at least 24 inches of minimum distance. And the longer you get it, usually going to be the better for a lot of our other accessories out there. But again, going to be a little dependent on what we have at home. But now that we've got that distance set, we can go ahead and actually start setting these foot pads in place all the way. So let's go ahead, grab our clamps, get these installed. Well, with our rails in place, it's time to secure them. We simply take our clamp here. We're going to add on this little pad that sits right there on that bolt. And then we just slot this right into place here, like so. And now we're going to be tightening this up and bringing this into contact with the underside of our rail. Can be helpful just to kind of balance this little pad. Make sure it's not turning as we do want it kind of going across the length of or down like the rail, right? Not really going across, don't have the room for that. Just keeping it flush. And now that I'm making contact here, just checking the underside, making sure that it's interacting how I want it to. You can see that it was running into a little bit of interference underneath there. But I just need to tighten this up. While we're kind of looking at it, let's take a look at the underside of the side rail here. Really not too much room on our Tundra to actually get this in place. You can kind of see where we have this opening here. You are going to be just a little limited on where you can set your rail in. Now that might be a little different because of our spray and bed liner here today, but I really don't think it's adding too much room here on the side rails. So probably what you're seeing is what you guys have at home as well. So just keep in mind, you're going to be a little limited of where you can set this in place. But now that that's made pretty good contact here, I'm going to keep going until I have a little resistance on my bolt. Keeping that latch all the way up until the very last moment is going to be helpful as well. And now that I'm starting to feel a little bit of resistance, I'm not going to go too crazy here, but just enough to where I feel like that bolt doesn't want to move. Now I can take my latch, I can push it down, and there we are, really nice and secure. So this does an excellent job. We're pretty much completely installed. The only thing we need to do, go ahead and start locking those locking cores to make sure we're nice and secure. Well, with one last turn of the key and a couple little more double checks here on all of our connection points, I think we're nice and installed with our BedRock system, ready to rock and roll. Well, now that we have it installed, I wanted to see how it's interacting here on the bed of our Tundra. So from the top of our corrugate to the very top of our rail is putting us just a hair under 25 inches. And for our clearance, which most of our cargo is going to need to take heed of, that's going to put you at 23 3/8 of an inch to the underside of your bar. So almost 2 feet there of height from the bed of our truck. That's going to be nice for most of our cargo needs. And again, here on the side rail for ourselves, that's putting you at about 2.5 inches to the very top there. So not too much height being added on here, but hopefully you guys get a good idea of what you're working with. Well, I really like how the bedrock system isn't really adding too much height here on our Tundra. Stays nice and low profile, allowing us to maximize our bed space without being a little too gaudy with it, anything too crazy. Now, if we are needing something just to go ahead and deliver a little bit more of a punch, maybe get some of our longer items even above our cab, one thing we could look at is that Yakima overhaul system. Really big fan of how that system works. You get adjustable heights for your cross rail systems. Now, the only thing I will say about it, you are going to have a minimum height as well. So it is going to be a little bit more extended, and it's not going to have this nice low profile design. I think this is excellent for a lot of us overlanders who really don't need anything too crazy, but we're just looking to maximize everything we can bring with us on the trails. Like something like a bike carrier here, as well as like an Yakima off-grid. I mean, the world's going to be our oyster with this system, and I really like how we can go ahead and start managing it a lot. Again, that overhaul is just going to be really nice if you're looking for something to really handle those bigger, heavier loads as well. But again, if you're just looking for some nice recreation kind of accessories to throw in the back of your truck, I think the bedrock system is an excellent way to go. Really like how that installation goes. Not too hard to go ahead and shift these bars around if I need to as well. And overall, just a great looking system here on our Tundra. Otherwise though, guys, I think that about does it for our look here today at the Yakima BedRock HD truck bed system on our 2020 Toyota Tundra. I'm Bobby. Thank you for watching.